All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series, but the QA, that's the important part, obviously stands for question and answer. We like to make this an interactive conversation, get into all of the top news stories that have broken over the last week, maybe some news hit over the weekend. It gives us a chance to kind of dig in a little deeper than just reading headlines in social media and getting outraged, especially because we've got stories this week that have been, I mean, they've been ongoing for years. Like one of these stories has been going on for decades and is still evolving. We want to make sure that we're kind of keeping a good handle on those conversations. Hold on one second. There are going to be a lot of those pauses. So it took a round of antivirals and 12 days of quarantining for me to finally get my first negative COVID test. I feel a lot better, but I'm definitely not 100%. And last week, we still ended up managing to hit a 2 hour show. I don't know that I can do that today. Um, Even in just kind of like the day to day activities and congestion and stuff like that, I'm not sure how well my voice is going to hold out. And I apologize up front because I know I definitely won't catch every cough, snort, nose clearing, sneeze, etc. So you will definitely be hit with some biology. Biggest apologies to the people that are catching this on the audio replay. It's pretty rough. Now, obviously, one of the biggest news stories that's kind of hitting everything, like the biggest deal that happened over the last couple days, is on Mastodon. I got a reply from George Takei. I know everyone in here in the chat, they're going to be very impressed by this. George Takei knows I exist. And I think that's a pretty big deal. I don't know that there's been anything else going on, especially like in the world of politics or in news, because George Takei is a very political figure. That's why he's appropriate to bring up on my tech news and tech politics podcast here. But yeah, I feel like, there's really very little that could kind of dampen. He put out a funny little joke on Mastodon, and I replied, "Man, that's a really funny joke." And he was like, "Yep, it's one of my faves." And it was I had to really contain my nerd excitement. It was everything I could do to not double barrel shotgun blast back on Mastodon. Oh my God, George Takei, I'm a huge fan. And in the 90s, when you did a book tour for your autobiography, you came through Dayton, Ohio, and I waited in line for hours, and you signed a copy of your book for me. And it's one of my most cherished Star Trek related possessions, and I think you're great. So, oh my. That's right, Bionics. You and Al Savakli and Simon Says If No. Uh, you all hit it with the oh my's. Yeah, it's so great. So I'm obviously being facetious. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it just because it is an incredible train wreck of watching media play out scenarios that have nothing to do with the actual sort of temperature in the room for voters in the political process. And whatever your feelings might be on it, I really feel like this, unfortunately, was a victory of mass media and oligarchy and rich people getting their way again, even though the numbers on the ground didn't necessarily reflect the same sentiment. But obviously, we're talking about Joe Biden stepping down from this next campaign, and Kamala Harris is sort of the heir apparent. Officially, we'll have to see what the DNC says is going to happen with the Democratic nominee for president. But I kind of feel like if the president were to step down, the vice president makes a lot of sense to run in his place. And I think we're ready for the other side, the GOP, to be playing some of the dirtiest politics that we've seen. I mean, again, since Hillary's campaign, because this country just doesn't seem ready to approach qualified candidates on the merit of their platform. And this media seems very interested in continuing a fake equivalency between the Democrats and the Republicans for the presidency of the United States. So now we have to expect, if the media isn't as biased or just trying to manipulate the temperature in the room so that they get more ratings and they get more clicks and they get more views, just like we talk about media bias for a company like Apple, we have to expect that they will fairly go after Trump's age and mental decline and the issues that we've seen with him on the campaign trail, and of course, bring up his numerous faults as a candidate or just as a human being, because that's what happened with Biden, right? So if everything is sort of a fair approach to discussing the merits of both of these candidates, then that's exactly what we're going to see. We're not going to see a media just gloss over all of Trump's issues to make it seem like the race is super, super close based on the merits of each candidate, and that they're not just doing this to try and gin up as much controversy because it's the outrage traffic that really pays the bills at a lot of these newspapers and websites and TV cable news channels. That's obviously what's going to happen. And Simon says, Hypno, I shared this on Mastodon. And again, this is another one of those posts on Mastodon that just got a ton of support and a lot of boosts and reposts and comments. Simon says, the Heritage Foundation will try to make her illegitimate candidate for the ballot. This is how obvious the playbook is and how the other side here is not an earnest political participant. Since Richard Nixon and Roger Stone to the Newt Gingrich days to the more modern era of political manipulation that we've seen on the right, where we're not really talking about good plans for the country. We're just talking about what keeps entrenched power entrenched. Rolling Stone put out an article on July 4th, and I'll maybe also link this in the show notes, just talking about how if Biden were to step down, we would likely see a flurry of lawsuits that really don't have any merit, but they are to sow chaos into the election process. And they'll go swing state by swing state to say, oh, but Biden was the nominee, and so changing the ballot, well, that's going to be difficult. And then we'll see a whole host of other dirty tricks, like, let's say you live in a district that has early voting and you filled out a ballot, and you received a ballot. There are going to be a whole host of issues now that Biden stepped down this late into the process, where I'm sure there are going to be robocalls to, disenfranchise voters, or to say like, oh, well, now that ballot is illegitimate. Don't turn that one in. But that's not how ballots work. There's going to be a concerted effort to confuse as many people as possible on what the ramifications of this move from the Democrats will be. And again, for whatever merit each candidate might bring to the table, I really do feel like this entire process has shown how the Democrats don't operate as a unified bloc, and they don't really have a good synergy in executing a number of these initiatives. And I'm still just going to be forever pissy that as much as Joe Biden has been a fine, centrist, non-controversial president in many of the issues that we talk about here on this podcast, I really feel that we were robbed in 2020, that a candidate like Elizabeth Warren would have been far more effective at targeting the actual root diseases our country faces, as opposed to just kind of softening the symptoms of a lot of the problems our country faces. And I really feel her presidency would have been far more effective at getting to big problems, especially in the banking industry and in the technology space, and the conversations that we have on this podcast weekly. I mean, we talk about big data and we talk about these huge companies and efforts towards properly empowering regulators to solve some of these issues. And I think she would have been better. But for some reason, we have to go and eviscerate any kind of potential female challenge to the presidency. And it's a real bad look for our country. It really does not look great. So, let me get this out of the way here. That's as much as we're going to get into presidential politics. I'm going to take a drink of coffee and then we got to knock out some housekeeping because I have a ton of news links and some of them are also like FCC and FTC stuff, but we've got to I've got to be dang it, I can't catch that cough. We've got to be a bit more I've got to be a bit more efficient in moving from story to story. So hold on one second, let me just drink some coffee. So, Michael Corcoran, I want to point this out. We need to keep hammering this home. And Michael, this is a very uh, a great response, but Michael says, I don't think they're going to have any chance to legally reject her being on the ballot. Courts have long ruled that political parties are private entities. They can do almost anything they want. The point isn't whether or not any of these lawsuits have merit. That's not the point. Step one in all of this is to look at the actions of the other side, and we have to stop pretending that they are reasonable, earnest participants in the political process. Look at a figure like Mitch McConnell and how many times we've swung rules for the Republicans in one direction and then completely changed the practice for the Democrats. This is not a rational, reasonable, legal approach to how ballots work in the states. The whole point is that you bring up the lawsuits, then that gets a whole bunch of talking heads talking about the legitimacy of the election and the will of the people and the DNC's convention, and they had Biden as the nominee, and how can we take this process seriously? The Democrats are trying to change horses mid-race. It's all about sowing discontent and delegitimizing how the process works. Everything we've seen from the right over the last several elections is we need to make this process look as broken as possible because chances are pretty good we're going to lose the overall popular vote and we have to win on electoral votes if we have any chance of maintaining power in the office of the presidency. This is not an earnest challenge to those ballot switches. This is to break the process and make it as chaotic as possible and confuse as many voters who are not tapped into all of this political discourse. That is the strategy. It's going to be the strategy. And they're going to pull out every single dirty trick we've ever seen in regards to attacking the Democratic candidate. So, moving on. So, I've been feeling a little bit better, and we got a couple videos out, and so I do want to share. Let me go into a screen share here because some of these are pretty good. I think there's some pretty good videos. It's some good tech conversation and stuff. Let me click in here. Starting off, your phone could be your laptop. The NextDock XL review. This is the big new NextDock. It's a 15-inch screen, but it's kind of exciting to see new features like wireless charging, a new trackpad orientation. We still have the Miracast support in the same kind of lap dock configuration that we know and love, but the price has not increased. This is kind of crazy to me that the way that NextDock batches their products, they can keep prices as crazy low as they can. There are some different pros and cons for the larger size, but you'll have to watch the video to catch that. Then I did a setup video for the OnePlus Watch 2R. And knowing how rambly and how long-winded I am, this isn't just I took it out of the box and I paired it with the O Health app, and that's the video. Smash the bell icon. Um, I ended up talking for over an hour, and I had to trim that video down. There is a lot of really good stuff to know in a first impressions on what makes the Watch 2R a really interesting launch from OnePlus. And again, I think there is a very concerted effort from OnePlus to deliver a price to performance that is unequaled in any other manufacturer shipping to the United States, shipping to North America right now. It's I'm trying not to spoil the video. Just watch the video because it's not just me taking it out of the box. I do have some other information in there that I think is pretty great. And then lastly, this one was the biggie. Surface Laptop 7 review, don't buy it for the AI. And I've had the Surface Laptop for just over a month as we're recording this podcast now, and I felt like that was an appropriate amount of time to put out a review because I've actually lived with it. I traveled with it, and it became my savior during COVID quarantining. That I didn't need to sit in this office in my sort of gaming office chair. It was so much nicer being able to take a super long life battery computer into the bedroom and get what little upright work I could get done from that incredible laptop. So it's a very positive review. It's also one of the longest videos I've put out in a while, and it was hard to shoot. It was really hard to stay upright for that entire video. But of course, because it's been a month since that was launched, that video is doing garbage traffic. There is no interest in any kind of lived in, experiential revisiting of the product. We got our review on day one. You have a whole bunch of PC builders out there that are still like, well, ARM doesn't run any software. I got another comment today, like 99% of Windows software won't even run on this thing. And you're like, I just have to start muting all of those people because it's too much nonsense. It's I forget what that debate tactic is called. It's like gobbledygook, but that's not gipgalish or something like that, where you just vomit out nonsense to a degree that you can't reply to every stupid thing someone says. And that's kind of what PC nerds are doing with ARM. Is that when you really talk about using it and living with it, and the fact that, like, yeah, an app like Audacity is not native ARM, and it still runs great. Like, I still record and edit and export audio, and it's better than any Intel laptop that I've ever used to do the same task. So, do I care? No, I don't care that that's not an ARM native app. Or like Handbrake performance or DaVinci Resolve or Affinity. If you can't use Adobe, maybe consider doing business with a company that will support the computer you want to use. Maybe that's how you affect change, is by voting with your wallet. So, yeah, that topic always seems to bring like hardcore x86 fans out of the woodwork, and they're almost all wrong, which is hilarious. Or just like, oh, they couldn't even get the dev kit out, and that wouldn't have changed anything. It would have changed practically nothing. It makes no difference to this situation if a major company like Adobe wanted to improve their ARM apps. They've been able to do that for years now. And you can't tell me that they couldn't have gone to Qualcomm and Microsoft and said, hey, we really want to make our programs work better on ARM. That Microsoft and Qualcomm would have been like, I don't know, Adobe. You got to wait for the dev kit. I see Qualcomm bending over backwards to give them stacks of their reference laptops so that Adobe could have gotten started. The fact that Adobe is still dragging their heels on this is not a Windows on ARM problem. That's an Adobe problem. That they're this bad at supporting what will be a competitive option in the Windows space. And then for smaller developers who still can't get their hands on a dev kit, it's that has to be frustrating. But if you want your ARM native code to at least start working on X Elite, you could be developing on last generation ARM chips too, like the 8CX dev kit. I think that was like $600 when it was brand new. I don't know that they're still selling it, but I'm sure it's not that difficult to get your hands on one. And if you're a smaller developer, that's how you start until we can get the X Elite dev kit. Again, every app that I've used on my Robo and Kala that had ARM native software or an ARM native version has run great on X Elite. So it's it's pretty dumb. The laptop is great. You should watch the video because I kind of go into all of that stuff more eloquently and concisely than I just did right there. Hold on one second. But I still don't recommend many people pick up the Surface config with 64 gigs of RAM. All right. We've got so much news. I think that's going to cap us for housekeeping. I feel like, in terms of this podcast, getting through a minor extension on the conversation surrounding presidential politics and my housekeeping to only be 20 minutes into the podcast is not terrible. But everything we're going to talk about this week, all of the articles, all of the housekeeping, all of the show notes will be available for this week's episode on somegadgetguy.com. And you can click through all of that, where it's also got all of the other website-y stuff and how to support the channel and affiliate links and codes and all of that fun stuff too. So let me get this out of the way. And we're going to start off with another political story, but this one's going to be short because I really want you to go and read the article. Because it's from my tech news politics man crush, John Brodkin. Net neutrality rules temporarily stayed as judge weighs impact of SCOTUS ruling. The court delays FCC rules until August 5th and asks sides for briefs on Brand X. A federal from the article, a federal court on Friday temporarily stayed enforcement of net neutrality regulations, but has not decided on the merits of a telecom industry request to block the rules on a longer-term basis. Quote, to provide sufficient opportunity to consider the merits of the motion to stay the FCC's order, we conclude that an administrative stay is warranted. The FCC's order is hereby temporarily stayed until August 5th, 2024. So I'm bringing this up because, again, I want you to read the article, and there's a lot happening here. There was a different court case. The Supreme Court ruled on it. The telecom industry said, hey, this changes the parameters of how an information service should be regulated. I still think this is horrifically stupid that we're calling the internet an information service. An information service is something that runs on a telephone service, right? So there's a telecommunication service and an information service, and we consider the telecommunication service more important. That's the actual backbone service. So the internet is still classified as something that runs on phone lines, an addition to the telephone service. But that's not what the internet is today. Now, telephony is something that runs on the internet, on data networks. So the internet is the backbone of all of our telecommunications now, but it's still rated and regulated as an information service. So this shell game that we're playing with, what even is the internet? It's a series of tubes, is horrifically stupid. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because our political process and our legal process is so crazy slow. So you think about, it took us 10 years of litigating the open internet order, and eventually Tom Wheeler's FCC under the Obama administration voted in place net neutrality rules. And we had that in place for about a year. But those rules were never really reinforced, and there was no challenge to any of those rules that the FCC could act on. So now, and then the Ajit Pai FCC under the Trump administration just gutted the rules a year into the Trump administration. So we had the rules in place for a year, but with nothing to really show for it. There was no momentum on that. And then a year into the Trump administration, they got rid of the rules. And then it took 3 years into the Biden administration to bring the rules back. And now those rules are being challenged again. So they were supposed to go in July, and now there's a temporary stay on those rules until August. Even though we've been talking about it, I think people get this sense that, like, oh, well, net neutrality is back in place. That means those rules are in effect. And that's not how any of this works. We open for public comments, and then people hear about net neutrality, and then there's a move from the FCC to actually install those rules. Then it takes time for the entire regulatory process to start examining how those rules are acted upon, because the FCC is a tiny little commission. And then courts still get involved in how those rules are put in place. So even though we were talking about this a couple months ago, that net neutrality is back, it's not really back yet. And we're going to see these challenges play out through August. And then I wouldn't be surprised if The change of venue. So there's a different court that is hearing the arguments than the previous court that sided with net neutrality years ago. I believe that we could probably see another stall to implementing this. And again, just as we were talking about earnest political participation, it's not about whether or not you've got good arguments and merit to show that net neutrality is bad, or you can't regulate the internet like it's the telecommunication backbone of all of our media and services and data. It's an information service, just like Snapchat. Snapchat is also an information service that runs on the internet. I bet you will see yet another challenge because our courts are slow to figure this stuff out, and it'll come down to a judge. Like, I don't know, do I understand internet stuff? Well, they've made an argument, and I guess we need to be traditionalists in how we don't regulate things that affect everyone's daily lives. So this is going to be very long running. Check out the article, John Prodkin. Again, the thing I love about John's articles is that the core description is very straightforward, but I would implore you, I beseech you, click through some of these other links. It's not just an op-ed. It's not just an off-the-cuff, I think net neutrality is the bestest. It is very well researched, and there's a ton of information cited in all of the links that help flesh out and help you understand what's really happening in this political space. This is such an important issue that keeps getting bandied about, just tennis ball whacked across the net, back and forth and back and forth. And we really do need to entrench some of these rules. It is so stupid to still call the internet an information service in current day. That is not how we use it, and that is not how services interact with it, on top of just the silliness of phone being the least used app in your smartphone, right? That's pretty straightforward. Everything else gets stupider from there. Let me drink some more coffee here real quick. Okay. So that's our big FCC story. I'm warning you, later in the podcast, there will also be an FTC story, but that one also won't be very long either. Um, Dave Burns, are you saying John does more work for his op-ed than the op-ed section of the paper of record, Juan? John Brodkin is just so good at explaining and digging into the history and kind of setting you on the right track. I mean, I know we're kind of being snarky and stuff, Dave, but like, I don't know. He's one of those guys that like I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to meet, but I'd really just like to shake his hand. I really like how he covers tech politics. It is sharp, it's witty. He doesn't talk down to his audience. He assumes that you'll understand how this stuff sort of fits together. The puzzle pieces are well laid out, and he lets the audience kind of put the last couple pieces together, and you go, "Oh, okay, well, I understand what's happening here." It's just really, really well done tech politics commentary, because everything in tech is politics. You cannot escape it. You can say, "Oh, I don't know, get into politics," and then basically that just means other people get to take advantage of you. That's all that means is I like being taken advantage of. I'm above politics. Because let me tell you, the people making these decisions are very into the politics of the decisions that they're making. So we got another follow up here. Again, one of the biggest tech stories over the last couple days is how, uh, excuse me, is how one company can apparently shut down the internet. Let me pull this up here. This is a follow up from CNN. Hundreds of US flights are canceled for the fourth straight day. Here's the latest on the global tech outage. And I know we got JoJo the techie is apparently still waiting out a flight that she had, that she booked, that got canceled on her. This is, I'm not going to dig into all of the particulars on the actual CrowdStrike issue. Going a couple days now, I kind of feel people, if you read up on what CrowdStrike is, it is telling a whole bunch of Microsoft systems go down. And that disrupts hospitals, it disrupts trains and public transit, it grounds all of these flights. And there's the immediacy of, oh, look, Windows screwed everything up. And this is why you should be running Linux, blah, blah, blah. And then we find out that it's really this security platform, CrowdStrike, pushed out an update on a Friday that wrecked all of these systems. And so now, 4 days later, we still haven't seen these companies fix their on the ground computers so that we can get these services up and running. Obviously, there's so much more to this story, and I'm grossly oversimplifying, but for me, this very much highlights the value of IT. From what little sort of high-end tech and some of the work that I did for a JIT contractor working with Department of Energy, I got a pretty good glimpse in like what it takes to keep systems running. When I was doing tech reselling, we had an ancient order fulfillment system. It was on an HP 3000. And we had to talk to an order fulfillment system at one of the labs that was a 1980s Unix system. And there was no way that we could automate this process. So a major part of my job was literally getting a piece of paper for an order from someone at the lab and then going into their system to fill in all of these text fields, which, mind you, had no borders. It wasn't like a modern document today. It was like just a basic Unix prompt page, and you could accidentally type outside the fields, which would destroy the order and would actually crash their system. So you had to be extremely careful, like, oh, if the description of the product that they're trying to buy goes one character over the field, then their system could irrevocably crash and you'd lose everything for the day because they did daily backups. But it took 2 days to restore. So we would get charged penalties on any time that would happen from our end. But thankfully, I don't think while I was there that ever happened while I was doing the order input. But anyway, then I would have to move character by character, manually, all of that data into the HP 3000 so that we could fulfill the actual order. What this really shows to me when it comes to CrowdStrike, one of the fixes is going in and manually deleting a file that CrowdStrike is breaking this CrowdStrike setup. So you boot into safe mode, you delete some file, you reboot the computer and you reinstall with a patched newer version and you should be fine. But you've got to do that manually, computer by computer by computer. Because if you don't, then you can kind of get into this like boot loop cycle. And some people are saying like to kind of fix the problem otherwise can sometimes take, upwards of 15 or 20 reboots to get the computer to really do what you want it to do, which that's ludicrous. You're not going to sit there and do that computer by computer by computer. So when it comes to the airlines, you got to think like walk through a modern airport and think about every single computer that you see. From computers that are running the arrivals to the 3 PCs that you'll see at every single kiosk in front of every single gate, at every single wing of every single airport. And none of these companies are employing the kind of person power to get in there and fix that quickly. Not when you have to go system by system by system. So we were still hearing about huge train outages throughout the UK. And they were kind of getting trains up and running again as stations would literally just pick up the phone and call each other to say, we've got this train coming in at this time, and that's how we're going to try and keep our schedule going. So there was a conversation on the Discord, and someone was saying like, oh, well, it's such an easy fix. And you're right, it is an incredibly easy fix per computer. But there are a huge number of train stations throughout London, let alone the whole of the UK, and you've got to go box by box by box by box, shutting it down, booting it into safe mode, deleting the file, rebooting it, checking to see that the system is recovered, and then moving on to the next computer. There is no possible way that the UK is paying for the type of IT infrastructure to do that fast. It's not possible. So, hold on one second. So we're going to see outages for the next several days as these companies are slowly getting their systems back up and running. And again, we just completely undervalue the impact of tech issues. Because how many people in this chat really feel like there is going to be proper restitution from CrowdStrike for the incredible disruption? So not only to the companies like the airlines, and not only to the infrastructure like hospitals and train stations. Think about just like Jojo the Techie is waiting on a flight right now. Is Jojo the Techie going to be properly compensated for her loss of time and productivity and her flight being off, which is going to impact her work? Is she going to get a check? Because she's due one. She deserves one. She's owed some kind of restitution for the gross disruption to her business and to her work. And that's where we keep coming down to, like, if you're going to be this vital to the infrastructure of how all of these services work, then you need to be better than this. You need to do a better job than what we've currently seen demonstrated in how you handle your responsibilities and updates and workflow and patches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, again, we seem to recognize that this company is vital and has been plugged into a critical part of our global infrastructure. So do we really want to destroy this company? No, I don't know that we do. But we need more competition. We need diversification of services. We need to see other companies step up and be able to compete in a global economy that, you know, makes CrowdStrike more likely to take their responsibilities seriously if someone can go to a competitor instead. I mean, there's so many moving parts and pieces to this. But at the end of this, we still have a whole bunch of people that are stuck at airports that can't get to work, that can't get home. Excuse me. And they're all gonna foot the bill for this. The company that was responsible for it will probably pay some kind of fine and will definitely, I mean, we'll see stock prices jump up and down. It's hilarious to me that on the day that this news broke and that we saw the massive outages, that their stock price dropped, I think something like 17 points, and then immediately rebounded like 5 points. So investors saw an opportunity to get CrowdStrike stock at a bargain. That's the game we're playing. Oh, their stock price went down 17 points. Now we can buy them cheaper, and they'll probably come back at a higher rate than what we bought them at. So we'll make a bunch of money on those trades. So great. But there's no comeuppance. There's no correction for the business. It was just a little kind of a black eye for the look of their share, for the look that their shareholders are interested in. It is completely ridiculous. Just to frame this so people can kind of understand the scale that we're talking about here. Hold on, let me click this over. So this was written up by on fortune.com. I'm sorry, I didn't do proper accreditation there. That CNN article that I showed, hundreds of US flights are canceled for the fourth straight day, was written up by Zoe Sottoli. I have mispronounced your name, Zoe, and I apologize. And Lauren Mascarenas on CNN. And then I've got another article here from Fortune. The worst IT catastrophe ever hit. The worst IT catastrophe ever, comma, hit less than 1% of all Microsoft Windows devices. So when you can properly impact the systems that are running services, less than 1% of Windows systems were impacted by this CrowdStrike issue, and that's what brought down massive parts of our infrastructure. That's the scale that we're working with here. That's how easy it is to disrupt. That's how seriously we need to take these obligations and responsibilities to shore up security, double and triple check our updates and patches. You don't just push code on a Friday. You've got to take the IT so much more seriously. And even CrowdStrike is kind of treating their IT department like some kind of expense that they need to keep whittling back on. That is the wrong play. And if you're a major tech company, you need to be looking at making that stuff so robust. It is so frustrating that as evolved primates, we do not understand prevention. We don't at all. If an IT department does their job and everything runs like clockwork and everything's smooth and all of these processes work, we say, but this is costing us too much money. We need to cut back on the IT costs. But then something like this happens and we can't recover quickly. So that doesn't look like so much of an expense to have a well-operating IT department, does it? But we don't understand prevention. We don't understand if you get ahead of the problem, then it doesn't become a problem. Instead, we say, oh, you said this was going to be a big problem and then it wasn't. You made us waste all this money. That's not a waste if the problem never manifests. So I'm perpetually disappointed in our species. I really feel like the lineage of like bonobos probably would have been better as evolved primates than our sort of more closely aligned with the chimpanzees lineage. I don't know. This is not good look for us as the supposedly the smartest species on the planet. We could be doing better. I'm just saying. Let me drink some more coffee and we're gonna move on here. Jojo the Techie, agreed. I am owed a vacation at this point. There's no break. I'm working and have to be up at 2 a.m. to catch a 5 a.m. flight so I can make it on time to where I need to be. And again, that's all time and effort and energy, Jojo. You should get a check. You should get compensation for that. You should be able to send them an invoice. This is what my time is worth. You know, like if I were on site doing a studio setup for a voice actor, I'd be charging $200 an hour. This disrupted me for 3 days. So 3 working days at $200 an hour. This is how much you owe me. Simon says, Hypno, quote, but we are a bit embarrassed, so no need to fine and sanction us. You know that's going to be kind of how this plays out. It's going to be such a slap on the wrist. And Dave Byrne saying, the market doesn't value prevention and maintenance, almost like it's a bad system we could do without. Eric, you're not wrong there. Okay, so that article, also I'll be linking it in the show notes. I didn't really read through it. From fortune.com, written up by Lindone, Matt Day, and also I think it was a collaboration with Bloomberg. I just want to bring up a quick one here too, because I think I'm pretty close to canceling Netflix. Where Netflix was the sweetheart, the darling, the service that we would always subscribe to. It's kind of become just the platform we have on as background noise. I haven't been watching a lot of Netflix lately. Instead, I mean, Marie and I have actually been having a lot of fun because we've kind of been shuffling. So we don't pay for every streaming service all the time, but we've held on to Netflix as the most consistent. So we just fired up like YouTube TV again for a month because we wanted to see tennis and soccer, and I think the Olympics are coming up. But that's it. We're going to cancel it at the end of this month. When something new comes out on Hulu, we pay for that just to see that on Hulu. Then we cancel it. I don't think we're running Max right now. Whereas again, HBO Max used to be something that we would pay for every single month. I don't remember the last time I turned it on was a couple months ago to just binge some what was not Robot. What is that? What Robot? What was that old show on? It was on Sci-Fi. It was robots fighting each other. What was the name of that show? I've just completely spaced it. Not bot. Anyway, that terrible podcasting here. That was the last time I fired up Max, is because they had a whole bunch of old seasons from like 2018. It's like, oh, life before the pandemic, and just watching Robot Wars? No, God, that's so gonna bug me. Is I can't remember the exact name of what that show was. So anyway, sorry. The thing that has perpetually bothered me about Netflix is that they say there is a monetary value to how many screens you can run at the same time, that there is a monetary value to battle bots. Thank you. I couldn't remember. I kept wanting to say bot battles. Let me tell you, I don't think I've got any kind of long COVID, but the brain fog is real. There's so many times where I completely space on something I'm doing in the moment I'm doing it, and that's going to be probably the longest part of my recovery. But I digress. Netflix, there's a monetary value to how many screens you can stream at the same time. There's a monetary value to the quality that you stream at, if it's 720, 1080p, or 4K, and they don't allow you to sort of compartmentalize. So it's not that you can say, I only need one screen, but I want to stream at 4K. There is no way to do that. And if you have people who live outside your home, you have to then pay additional on top of the number of screens. So for some reason, there is a geolocation component to the number of screens that you can stream on. And they have to be in your household, or you have to pay like another $8 a month to have an additional outside screen. I am so mad that Netflix's strategy of reducing costs by adding advertisements worked. It kills me. This is one of those things where I needed consumers to revolt. But instead, oh, it's a little bit cheaper and I still get to keep all my Netflixes. And it's destroying the streaming landscape. It is making streaming so awful that Marie and I are like, we're regularly just checking out discs from our local library because we can do that for free. And there's really good stuff at our libraries. And I wish more people were doing stuff like that. But instead, we've got kind of a marketplace right now where very few people even have a disc playing machine connected to their TVs anymore. And it makes me really, really sad. Because the plan that we're on is the absolute cheapest ad-free one-screen 720p quality version of Netflix, and it genuinely hasn't bothered us. I do kind of miss 4K on some movies. You can kind of see the artifacting and the image isn't as clear as I'd want it to be, but that's kind of what's pushed Netflix into this role of just being the background noise streaming service. Well, Netflix is going to be getting rid of that bottom tier plan. We're already paying 12 bucks a month for one screen at 720p. That is stupid. That is too expensive for what Netflix is really offering, and they're going to be getting rid of that, which means I think the next ad-free tier is going to push us up to 16 bucks a month. And we're not going to pay it. As soon as Netflix pulls the plug on the basic streaming, the ad-free low tier $12 a month. I can't believe we're saying $12 a month for 720p streaming is the basic cheap plan. How? It is anyway. As soon as Netflix does that, Marie and I are just going to cancel it. If something comes out on Netflix and we want to watch it, we'll fire up our account for a month, but we're not going to sit here and pay for it month after month after month with roughly a 50% price hike when we can't get what we want. If I could pay for specifically what I wanted in that plan, I'd be more inclined to stay. You can say, I want one screen at 4K quality and you're going to charge me this amount of money. Cool. But that's not how they're working their service. So Netflix is gone. I'm done. I'm tapped out. I'm so frustrated with the streaming landscape. And the only advantage that we have here is that we can click in and click out from month to month. So that's the only advantage we have over basic cable now. If we were to pay more for like a cable plan again to have ads in our cable TV shows, the one advantage is we can turn it on and off at will. We don't have to like sign a 2-year agreement or anything stupid like that. It is so dumb. And is yet again another opportunity to point out, if you're renting movies and you're watching TV shows, check with your local library. You might be able to get a lot of this stuff for free. I don't know about you, but free is pretty great. Netflix used to be better than free. Netflix used to be more convenient, more accessible, better quality than free. But not feeling it. I'm not feeling it anymore. Free is now better than having 5 different streaming services that we juggle. That is way too much work on our end to manage them all. They're too complicated. They depend on a business model where you just sort of forget that you're paying them from month to month. I'm done. This is obnoxious. This is so stupid. So Netflix, you used to have me as one of the highest paying customers that you could offer services to. Now I'm one of the lowest paying customers that you offer services to, and eventually I will just not pay you any money at all. And I'm sad that unfortunately your business tactics have worked, and there are more people willing to put up with ads in your streams than there are people who will vote with their wallets. I it kills me. It really guts me that this stuff works. Oh, I don't mind watching. It's like an ad per show. No, 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 no. I paid for Netflix to avoid commercials. I'm not going back to cable. I'm not doing that. I'm so done. Oh, Nick Gay, flattery will get you everywhere. Did Juan lose weight? No, I am actually now back to the heaviest I've been in a while. I backslid pretty hard with COVID. Just sitting in bed, I lost a lot of muscle tone. I mean, like there were a couple days there where just sitting upright was a challenge. So I'm just now getting back into. I'll go take a short walk around the block, and that's my exercise for the day because I'm gassed at the end of that walk. Gabaletta saying, I've honestly been considering canceling Netflix, but a few shows keep me tethered to it. Totally understand. But I would start looking at what are the costs of those shows. Because, I mean, like for a while there, it was like, I'm just rewatching things like Parks and Rec. And I went to eBay, I got Parks and Rec on discs, and I ripped those discs to my Plex. And that's one cost I don't ever need to revisit. Now, it doesn't matter if Netflix loses Parks and Rec. I don't even know if Parks and Rec is still on Netflix. I don't know that it is. But now I have Parks and Rec. It's mine. I mean, the copy of it. I don't own the IP, obviously. But like now I can just put it on whenever I want. So it's things like that. You start doing the math on forever. I'll never need to pay a streaming service ever again for a show like Parks and Rec. I had to pay a little more up front, and one of the discs was really badly scratched, so a couple episodes get a little bit garbly. This is so silly. But at some point, I'm gonna check out Parks and Rec from the library so I can replace the discs that didn't rip well. And that'll be for free. So So again, I just feel like what is the entertainment value of something like Netflix? I did this for a while. I was really waiting for Spotify to do like an HD streaming service years ago. And instead of paying Spotify to not give me what I wanted, every month I'd buy an album or two. And I would try my best to buy directly from the artists as opposed to like going through Amazon. Is how I fell in love with Run the Jewels in that time period because they did a really cool like, hey, if you buy this album, we'll give you the wave files for high quality audio. Cool. But over that time, I just kind of fell in love with rebuilding my own music collection, and now I've got a huge music collection. My favorite artists that I can stream from anywhere. I don't need to pay for a streaming service, but then I found Qobuz and I really like Qobuz. So Qobuz is kind of helping me find new artists, and then after a point, I'll probably cancel Qobuz and go back to just buying music directly from artists every month again to build up a collection. It's you front load the costs, But then you have a library forever, as opposed to I'll just keep paying every month in perpetuity, and I'll never have any guarantee that that they'll have what I want to watch. And that's what killed me with Netflix is once every other streaming service started popping up and movies and TV shows started moving around, there's no point. There's no point in staying loyal to one streaming service if I can't count on them having. So every time I fire up Netflix and I get those warnings, oh, this movie's leaving soon. Well, you know what? That's a movie that I'm going to go search out like a used DVD, and then I'm just going to keep that movie. I'll just own it. Then I don't have to worry if Netflix loses it, or if it goes to Max, or if it goes to Hulu, or if it goes to Apple TV. I don't have to bother. That's a movie I love. I know I'm going to watch that movie again. It's a movie I have. What do I have? I have over 700 titles in my Plex library, and I have a crate of DVDs in a storage unit. Well, DVDs and Blu-rays. I'm just kind of using that generically because I'm an old, elder, millennial, Gen X cusp nerd. So yeah, I'm not saying that it's a perfect plan, but when I want to watch Coming to America, I don't look for where that movie is. I go to Plex where I know I have a copy of Coming to America and I can watch it immediately anywhere I have a data connection because I love that movie. I'm going to watch that movie at least once a year, every year. And it's mine. Oh, yeah. Michael Corcoran. That was me and HBO with South Park, The Sopranos, and The Wire. I just kept rewatching them. I'd rather pay 35 bucks a month for the 80 episode DVD collection of The Wire. And then you never have to pay for it ever again. And that, again, it was like tricky hunting down a way to kind of get a good copy of *Halt and Catch Fire*, one of my all-time favorite AMC shows. But again, I know I'm gonna watch through that series probably once a year, if not, just have it on as background noise and just kind of keep looping it. So it didn't make any sense for me to like keep paying for streamers. Oh, Nick Gay. Juan said, "Run the Jewels," and you got a piece of my heart. They brought back my love of hip hop. RTJ4, when that came out in the pandemic, just rocked my socks. I love that album so much. Um, Nick Gay, if Little Lex loves Run the Jewels, you can put me down as her godfather. She's listened to some. Right now, she's on a female pop power singer kick. I gotta say, modern hip hop is where I think I've done the poorest job of educating Lex on music. So RTJ is is a little aggressive, but she has heard some just as I've been like driving around in traffic, and something will come on if I just do like kind of a random on all of my music collection. But that's definitely something we've got to work on is bringing her up to speed on more hip hop. She's pretty well versed on alternative rock, hard rock, pop, electronica. She loves Daft Punk. So I mean, like stuff like that. I think we're pretty good. It's I really want her to appreciate the social commentary and storytelling in hip hop, and so I don't want to just like I don't want to do to her like let's just kick off with like MC Hammer and Crisscross and Kid and Play and like the light fluffy stuff. Like I kind of want her to appreciate the better storytellers and the people that are trying to say something with their music. Like I think who I need to start her off with is actually like Queen Latifah, like UNITY, stuff like that. I want her to really appreciate the history of this in the same way that I like pumped her head full of like the Foo Fighters and then explained like, oh, well, the Foo Fighters, they're drawing from these things, and there was a band called Nirvana, and Nirvana kicked off the sort of public face of grunge, and then that came from sort of this idea of punk and underground and blah 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 blah. It's funny because she's still young enough that she'll sit and kind of listen to me for a bit, but Daddy unfortunately turns everything into a history lesson. So I gotta not do that actually. Now that I say all that out loud and I was just rambling there, maybe I should just shut up and let her like some music. Like, she starts listening to pop, and I'm like, okay, well, that's really impressive. What you need to listen to here is she's doing something that's evocative of the mamas and the papas. But really, this is fascinating because if you've ever listened to some old Patsy Cline, the production on that, blah 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 blah, Dolly Parton. Oh, my poor daughter. When Daddy gets excited, he just starts mansplaining like crazy. Let me tell you about female country singers. Moving right along. This is one again. I really need folks to kind of keep up with the news and the reporting on this. No company that's dabbling with AI, I believe, has any kind of earnest approach to consumer privacy or protecting copyright. I really believe that this next step for AI products and services is going to be unequal. It's going to be rich people and massive corporations get copyright protections, but everyone on the ground who has their content ripped off, well, too bad. It's just, there's no way that we can prevent it. The AI is a thing, and you're just going to have to get used to all of your stuff getting stolen. This is coming by way of Wired, written up by Annie Gilbertson and Alex Reisner. Apple, Nvidia, Anthropic used thousands of swiped YouTube videos to train AI. Creators claim their videos were used without their knowledge. And I don't understand why they would say claimed. Again, the entire process that we've seen in training these large language learning models, no one is asking permission to go in and suck up all of your content. It's just being used. The data set called YouTube Subtitles contains video transcripts from educational and online learning channels like Khan Academy, MIT, and Harvard. The Wall Street Journal, NPR, and the BBC also had their videos used to train AI, as did The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and Jimmy Kimmel. Proof News also found material from YouTube megastars including Mr. Beast, Marquez Brownlee, Jacksepticeye, PewDiePie. Some of the material used to train AI also promoted conspiracy theories, such as the flat Earth theory. So it's great. We've got a whole bunch of quotes in here from YouTubers saying, well, this is theft. They're stealing our stuff. They're going to use our stuff to harm creators. And you're like, yeah, this is what we've been talking about for a while now. Thank you for kind of joining the party now that it's affected you. You know, again, it's like the frustration is time and time again, like if it's building backdoors into phones or location tracking or like sucking up your user data to train models, every single time one of these things hits, you've got a whole bunch of what's the word that I want to use? I can't remember the word that I want to use. People who, not pundits, but researchers. Let's just say researchers. Got a whole bunch of people saying, hey, there are security issues here, there are privacy issues here, and then there's also just like content issues. What's fair and how do people make money on their content? Well, you're just going to rip off their content. And a bunch of people go, oh, but no, it's the future. No, you put it out publicly. You must wanted it to have gotten ripped off. And then it happens. And instead of having listened to the warnings of people that were putting out the warnings, now everyone's just like, oh, who could have foreseen that it would have been this bad? Who could have foreseen that Apple, who has a track record of ripping off your data and violating your privacy and building dark patterns into the iPhone so that it's difficult to get out of their services, who could have imagined that Apple would rip off YouTubers? This is a complete shock and surprise to us. We couldn't have ever foreseen that this would ever be used badly. And it happens time and time and time again. I'm no great prognosticator. I'm no Nostradamus over here, but it's pretty easy to see these cycles play out over and over and over again. And this current generation of AI still cannot deliver a proper consumer-facing business model. There is no path to profitability when you're dumping billions and billions and billions of dollars into data centers for like something like Microsoft Copilot. Oh, I click on this little button, I say, draw me a picture of a cat, and then a gallon of water is consumed at a data center, and I get an almost usable animated cat. Isn't that pretty nifty? No one's paying for that. The subscriptions that people have for like ChatGPT right now are not covering the costs of data centers. There is no consumer facing business model. So I guarantee you that for every one of these controversies that comes out, that there's going to be another follow-up article that, oh, well, if the right president is elected, then all of these AI companies are going to start vying for government contracts. Because every single time these faux libertarian, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, rugged individualists in Silicon Valley can't make a ton of money on a consumer facing business model, their pivot is to get government contracts. These companies cannot exist without taxpayer dollars. They want the government entrenched in their operations because then they have a steady stream of money coming from taxpayers. That's the business model. That's why they have this investment in data centers. That's why they're burning all of this capital, all of this money, because they eventually want the government on the hook to subsidize their business failings. That's it. And all along the way, artists and writers and video producers and content creators and people on the ground actually making all this stuff are going to get stomped on. Disney will be able to go to ChatGPT. Excuse me, sorry, I couldn't catch that cough. Disney will be able to go to ChatGPT and say, work some of your algorithms in black box specifications so that our content isn't ripped off. And it won't be perfect, but Disney will be able to chill some of the impact of AI using copyrighted characters. An artist on DeviantArt isn't going to have that same pipeline, isn't going to have that same communication with ChatGPT. Someone doing original art or an indie comic or a low budget film or YouTube videos isn't going to be able to go to Microsoft and say, hey, you guys keep using my stuff. And it's copied word for word. It's not even commentary and critique. You're not even transforming it. You're literally just lifting my language and serving it up to people in a search result. Google is doing that with all of their AI. It's just copy pasting. It's not even doing something new or interesting with the language. It's just regurgitating stuff that it's already sucked up from the internet. But it does it so that you don't have to go to the website to get that information. It's just on the search results page. Well, then that denies that website traffic. This is so rife for massive class action lawsuits. All of these AI companies are in hugely actionable positions, but the only time we care about those lawsuits is like, oh, Scarlett Johansson's voice was kind of ripped off, and she's famous and hot, so I guess we should care about that one. It sucks. It's really stupid. I hate it. Dave Burns, exactly. Privatize the profits and socialize the losses. I am absolutely going pinko on this one, aren't I, Dave? Hold on one second. Oh yeah, Michael Corcoran. A lot of these YouTubers are the type of AI bros that said any skepticism of AI was pointless and makes you a luddite. And I'm sure they will absolutely stay consistent on message if they were to find their content lifted, right? I'm sure they will stay the course because it's the future. I mean, it's okay if it's killing my profitability because AI is the future and you should not get in its way. I think one of the things that pisses me off is yet again, all of these massive data corporations are blurring the lines on machine learning. There are things that happen on your phone that are machine learning. There are things that then need to go to a cloud server that are also machine learning. And they're purposely trying to blur what happens where. Because again, there are so many cool things that you can do. Like I can run a little image server and I can employ current machine learning tools to do things like face detection. So I can tell this little system, hey, that's my daughter, that's my mom, that's my wife, that's my dad, that's my brother, that's my sister, and go ahead and scan. but it stays on my server. And that image data isn't being farted up to a Google or Microsoft or Facebook cloud to improve their training models. Now, will it work as well as a massive data center, kind of ripping off my data? No, it probably will make more mistakes. It probably won't scan as fast. It's not going to be as good as a massive data center storing all of my family photos. But I can run that. I can do it. Literally, it's like a plugin on my QNAP, my NAS. They have their own system to do that, and it stays pretty well locally. I don't think QNAP allows for data up. I'm actually going to have to investigate that. I genuinely don't know. I'm not actually using the QNAP plugin. I'm just saying it could be that easy. I desperately want to take one of these little mini PCs that I've built. I have saved everything that I've written ever since 2013. And I want to take, excuse me, I want to take every script and article and interview that I've ever written for over 10 years, and I want to dump it into like a little language model that's trained locally. And I want to see, can I come up with a Juan bot? Now, obviously, if I run this from like a little mini PC, like, I don't know, like an AMD 5700, it's not going to be fast. This thing is going to be painfully slow. I'm definitely not going to be able to put in enough RAM to build these models and to facilitate these transactions. But I would love to say, like, I'm going to go to bed. Here are all of the schematics for a new product. You have 10 years of my style of writing and speaking. Come up with a script based on these specifications and this kind of product, and I liked this and I didn't like that. And then I'm going to go to bed. And hopefully, 6 to 8 hours later, it can spit out some kind of framework that then I can kind of tweak and be ready to shoot. I think that would be awesome. I think that would be really, really cool. Would it be practical? No, I could probably write a script faster than 8 hours. But it would be fun, and that would be a local, controlled, dedicated piece of machine learning technology. And this whole language learning model thing has now entrenched all of these business models that are completely toxic to the experimentation and the evolution of AI. Every company has walled off their research because there's a financial incentive to not collaborate. And that's also just going to slow down every other type of AI research. So we've kind of put all this money on language learning models, but there were supposed to be all of these sort of like general aware AI projects that are now completely underfunded. And that's a bummer. That actually slows down what could be the cool evolution of computers that are more generally aware of what's going on around them. So anyway, not real happy with Apple because, again, as a market leader, they are going to bring a scale of users to their products that no other company can match. And they're just as scummy as everyone else that we accuse of being scummy in this user data privacy kind of conversation. Apple is ripping off your location data and the location data of everything around you. Apple was trying to build backdoors into the iPhone to reduce their server costs. Apple is now siphoning off YouTuber content, and it's going to be impossible to get anyone to care because there's going to be almost no legitimate pushback against Apple's business models in the media. There's going to be kind of like a token, we don't think Apple should do that. Anyway, let's talk about the Vision Pro's new videos because they've got, no one cares about the Vision Pro. It's going to be great. It's all rigged. Oh, see, Dave Burns, and this is in all caps. So I'm going to say this as not appropriately because Dave Burns is yelling in the chat. Yes, exactly. This machine learning is super cool, and democratizing coding for people who can't code with a chat GPT like solution is an amazing idea. But instead, we're asking this guy to browse the web for us. Not only are we asking a data center to browse the web for us, we're using a humongous amount of electricity. I forget what the power draw is of the current data centers working on AI projects, but it's something ridiculous. Like it draws more power than small European countries, right? But then also we're using a humongous amount of water, which is not a resource we should be taking as lightly for all of this. It's so frustrating. Yeah, go Starscream, spot on. I've said this before, I'll say it again. AI doesn't exist. It's just a marketing term for, look, we're doing something that's already existed, but on steroids. Again, you've had all of this stuff since those Kirin chipsets in Huawei phones could identify the subject in your camera. It's an evolution of that. Does that sound as exciting as what we're trying? Oh, it's AI. No. Excuse me. That's just basic machine learning. Al Sabakli, hey, I'm originally from a small European country. I resent that. No, you don't resent it. You resemble that. There's nothing to resent. You should actually be upset that Microsoft is using as much power as your small European country. We should be upset. That is an incredible amount of electricity to throw at terrible web results in search. Like, why do we think that this is an exciting future forward facing business model? This is going to be the next failure of like NFTs. We have a couple more links here, and then we can talk about the Pixel 9. Let me just move this around right here. If you were a massive data company like Google, and so like Google has kind of earned this reputation for killing off projects, right? You can go killed by Google every single month. We tell these jokes like, oh, there's another service that's being killed by Google. Everyone in the chat here, excuse me, everyone in the chat, what do you think you would do to start changing the perception of the Google brand? You're a Google executive. You're one of the big thinkers, the big idea guys, right? You go into the boardroom, you say, hey, everyone's accusing us of just killing projects. And that's not what we do here at Google. We do so much more than just kill our projects. We make things, we do things. We're Android and Chrome and all of these awesome things that bring value to people's lives. How do we change the perception of Google so that people don't immediately link us with ending projects that people found useful? What would you do? Let me tell you, I think what my big idea would be, what I think would make the most sense is if I wanted to change the perception of Google killing projects, would be I would end Google's link shortener service and create a massive problem of dead links across the internet. That's what I'd do. I'd go in there and say, hey, I know people say that all we do is kill stuff. So what we're going to do to fix our reputation is create the biggest source of link rot that the internet has ever seen. And I think that's probably how we'll change the perception of Google so that it looks like we're doing better work and doing some cool stuff. Because the Google URL shortener links will no longer be available in August of 2023. So if you've ever used goo.gl to shorten a link and you've ever shared that link or put it in a web post or something like that, that's going away the end of August. You've got less than 2 months to go through and see if you've ever relied on goo.gl to send and share information. All of those links will be dead. It makes me so sad because this is one I didn't call. But there was this, like, for a short period of time, there was this proliferation of services that would take a really obnoxiously long link and make it a tiny little link that was easier to share. And actually, there was a lot of pushback to this idea because people rightly said, if you use one of these services, you really shouldn't depend on that link shortener, because that link shortener needs to operate forever for the link to be properly recognized. And I used goo.gl a lot back in the day. I don't know that I've used it recently for anything seriously. But there was a while they were like, hey, just to kind of shorten up and tidy up all these links. I'm sure in some of my older YouTube videos, if you go to the description, company would give me an obnoxiously long link and I would use goo.gl to shorten it. So all of those links are going to be broken now. All of those links will go nowhere. All of the tracking, all of the site hosting, all of the web, the value that we put on the popularity of articles and topics, all of that is going to be horrifically impacted by Google pulling the plug on this. It is maddening because I can't believe that the goo.gl servers are so costly to operate that they couldn't manage a better transition period out of this service. There's one little blog post, and that's it. I don't think I've gotten any notifications in my Gmail that, hey, these are the links that you've shortened. If any of these are on important web pages or documents, you need to go and change those because this will be discontinued by some future date. We got a blog post July 18th letting us know that August 23, all of this is dead. They couldn't even give us to the end of the year. They couldn't give us 6 months to sort all this stuff out. So, yet again, Google is perfectly reinforcing their reputation for ending projects, killing services, and putting all of the work on fixing stuff on the people that they're most directly impacting. So anyway, if you've ever used goo.gl, it's going away. and Google couldn't even give us an exit, an entry, a runway to properly account for them just yanking the cord out of the machine. It's so frustrating. I'm going to bring this one up, but this is a bit techier than I think we can dig into with the current state of my voice. But for all of the gnashing of teeth on X Elite and for all the PC bros who can't seem to figure out that it's a computer that works just like any other computer and how ARM is always awful and it can only ever be used for like basic disposable tablets, even though Macs run great and the Windows Laptop 7 is the best laptop I think I've ever used. I don't feel there's been the same kind of ire. So we're just starting to see this story gain a bit more traction. Like Gamers Nexus just put out a video talking about this, and now suddenly, oh, now it's a thing that we're really anxious and interested in. There was like a little bubble of hardcore PC techies that were pointing this stuff out and saying like, hey, this is a big problem. But now it's starting to kind of spread to the larger PC building community. From the way that I kind of been interacting with these stories, I'm really gilding this lily. Written up by videocards.com. I don't know who has the byline on this. There's no author on this. So anyway, Intel states that mobile 13th and 14th gen core series are not affected by instability issues. Intel has issued a statement to Digital Trends, who followed. I'm trying to select this. I can't copy that text. Anyway, Intel has issued a statement to Digital Trends, who followed a story on recent instability issues. Recently, one of the game developers, Matthew Cassells, founder of Alderaan Games, has claimed that the Intel mobile series are also affected and exposed to the similar crashes as reported on the desktop platforms. Cassells and Alderaan Games are among the first to share statistics on how Intel hardware affects gamer crashes and which platforms are impacted. So far, only the Core i9 SKUs from the 13th and 14th generation have been mentioned. There are now reports that even lower tier SKUs may experience similar problems. So, for 13th and 14th gen parts, we've seen a lot of instability. And Intel keeps saying, our chips are fine. They're not admitting to any issues with the development of their processors. And they're trying to kind of push in other directions. Maybe it's a user setting, maybe it's software that's not properly optimized, maybe it's a motherboard config. We don't know. We know our chips are great. So if you're having problems, we'll try to help people sort them out. But you know, it's probably your motherboard manufacturer. And all of the motherboard manufacturers are saying, no, we think it's a problem with the chips. So everyone's kind of pointing blame. But we're seeing significant numbers of failures on 13th and 14th gen high performance enthusiast chips. And now we're starting to get reports that the same instability could be reaching Core i5 and Core i7, just we're not driving those chips as hard, so that failure rate might not manifest to the same degree. Now it would seem that the highest performance enthusiast laptop chips, which are built very similarly to the desktop chips, are also facing these instability issues. That's 2 generations of Intel processors for desktops, and now also likely for mobile chips that are impacted by this issue. We don't have a full understanding of what's causing it, but we are seeing more and more people, especially as these chips age, that these instability issues seem to get worse. So now outlets like Gamers Nexus are starting to try and investigate more scientifically, but tracking down what makes a chip fail is incredibly difficult, and it's really hard to get a scope to get an idea of what the scope of the issue is. Because like we've always had an issue where maybe you just got a bad chip. That could just, I mean, legitimately, like a sample size of 1, I put it in my motherboard and the computer didn't boot, and that's a problem. Well, that's a faulty chip. But if we're talking about a systemic design issue that leads to instability and crashes and failure, that's harder to track down and pinpoint. You have to decipher who just has a bad chip from what is a systemic issue in that pipeline, in that market. So one to keep on our eye on. If you're in x86, I think this further reinforces why you should probably be shopping AMD, especially if you're trying to build a higher performance machine, an enthusiast machine, a gaming machine. In general, I just think they've had the better solution. They've been delivering a better performance per watt, and I think this news also goes to reinforce they have the more robust platform at the moment. Intel is struggling to bring higher performance with better power efficiency, and we've been waiting for them for years. I mean, not just since Apple left Intel, before then. You know, there were years of us saying, like, are they going to put out another 14 nanometer chip, or are they finally going to get their fabrication processing gear so that they can bring some of these other efficiency improvements? No. All they're going to do is ramp up power draw and clock speed. Great. That's awesome. It's exactly what I want in a laptop. A portable computing machine that runs on a battery. I want to see a chip really suck as much juice as possible. So, yeah, it's really funny to me. I have that really rugged G-Tac laptop, and it uses a 12th gen Intel Core i7U. Supposed to be like the most power efficient, higher tier chip that Intel can make. It's a Core i7, but it's a power efficient Core i7. It was like one of the first years that they also put in efficiency cores. So you have big CPU cores and little CPU cores, just like your smartphone. And I was using it yesterday, just kind of messing around because I wanted to kind of look at efficiency core performance. And I plug it in without even thinking. I plug it into the same charger that I've been using with my X Elite. It's a 45 watt smartphone charger, power delivery charger. I plug that into my X Elite, and the laptop goes, cool, I can charge off of this while you still use me, and nothing is impacted in terms of performance. Without even thinking, I plug it into this U series, which is demonstrably less powerful than the X Elite in terms of benchmarking. It's like a 50% reduction of single core CPU performance, and more, it's less than half the performance in multi-core. if we go by Geekbench scores and things like that. I plug it in, and the laptop pops up this giant warning on the screen. You've plugged this into a 45-watt power source. This is under the 65-watt spec recommended for charging this laptop, and the laptop will be altering system performance accordingly. The most power efficient version of an i7, which is significantly less powerful than an X Elite, could not handle 45 watt and recommended 65 watts so that you could charge on top of using it. And we're having these debates like in comments on YouTube videos. Yo, ARM, it's so useless. And then like Intel chips are failing. AMD's performance efficiency is better than Intel's, but it's still not as good as ARM's. And do we really believe that OEMs are just going to flip and start using AMD in all of their products? That is a juggernaut of an industry to try and course correct for, where so many companies have been basically focusing Intel first to then try and catch AMD. AMD's yield isn't going to keep up with that kind of demand. So prices are going to skyrocket. And again, this only is going to further entrench TSMC as like the foundry to get all your chips made, which is going to increase costs and parts for everybody. So I don't know. This is a humongous mess. I am not qualified to dig into all the specifics on like microcode and BIOS updates and performance curves and power draw and all this stuff, but it's been an exciting month of Intel news that should have people at least looking at what is a competitive solution and what is another option that we could use to accomplish a lot of work while also using less power. And I can't think of a better solution than ARM. ARM chips will probably lose in the next generation of x86 if you just put them in a head-to-head race trying to get work done, but I doubt they're going to lose and use more power losing. So there we go. Dave Burns says, L1 Techs used data anonymized from a game streaming data center service to confirm that this would appear to be a chip issue. They have a pretty good video on it, but I'm not learned enough to say it. I mean, I think the most important thing that we need to take away from this, Dave, though, while Intel chips are crashing and enthusiast systems are facing significant quality issues, the most critical part of all of this is Qualcomm failed at getting dev kits out before the launch of the X Elite laptops. So even though X Elite laptops are working great and they don't have these power and stability issues, and roughly 90% of all programs written for Windows will run on an X Elite, because the dev kits weren't handled very well, you should still keep buying Intel. I mean, your system is going to crash at some point, and you'll probably suffer a whole bunch of stability issues. But the dev kits, we really are worried about the dev kits. That's what makes computers better. Are dev kits that developers can write ARM native code on, and because those didn't get out there, you should just stick with the systems that are already not working. I don't even want to spend a lot of time on this next one because I really just want to get to the Pixel while I still have some voice. But I do want to just kind of point out something to keep our eye on, and I'm not going to read through this whole article, but written up by Kyle Orland over at Ars Technica, FTC attacks Microsoft's post-merger Game Pass price increases. Now, Microsoft acquired Activision. The FTC was trying to block that acquisition, and that's still not done. So Microsoft and Activision are in the process of merging. The FTC can still present a case to undo this merger. This isn't done. So we should just keep an eye on what happens, because as Microsoft moves forward, they've made a lot of claims to a lot of regulators saying, hey, this isn't going to impact this. This isn't going to harm competition. We're going to divest this. And if those things don't come true in a timely fashion, then regulators have ammunition to say Microsoft was not earnest in their guidance for how this merger would be accomplished. And one of the things that the FTC is really gonna hammer is, you said this wouldn't impact services for consumers, but now Game Pass is going to a more stratified subscription tier where some games go to some people at certain levels, and some day one releases you have to pay more for, and you're raising prices. Now, Microsoft is going to have a good argument to say, well, that's just inflation, right? You know, when Game Pass started, it was worth this much money per month, and even just over the years, it, you know, just based on inflation, it would really be worth this much. So we're raising prices to match inflation. But they're going to have a harder time arguing the different tiers of Game Pass and what products you get with what service. That's going to be, I think, a stronger argument for the FTC. So we should just keep an eye on it. I do not believe that the FTC will be able to completely undo this merger. I think it's too big, the numbers are too large, and again, like, our evolved primate brains just can't wrap our minds around the enormity of these two organizations amoeba blobbing into each other. And I think it's still going to just go through. There will be challenges in court cases, and a lot of money is going to be spent on examining how business practices change as these two companies blob into each other. But it should be, I think, an interesting way to see, how does our legal system adapt to increasingly huge organizations morphing? How does this business model change? And what impacts are there on consumers? Do we have good data to talk about things like harming competition? Because we don't do a good job of talking about that kind of stuff until it's so catastrophic that we need to, like, broadsword hammer out legislation to try and fix things that were problematic along the way. We kind of get to that point where we lobster pot, lobster pot, lobster pot. Oh no, the water is boiling. Now how do we fix it? So this is going to be one of those cases we really need to watch, because it's also going to impact the future of other large mergers. Like, Google's going through another acquisition on, like, cloud services and security services, and you're like, well, with what just happened to CrowdStrike, do we want more of our eggs just in one basket? It's a big mess, and it's very difficult to kind of untangle every little string of every little scenario of what went down. So this one, I think, is a critical one to keep an eye on. It is just an impressive legal example that I think needs to be taught in business classes for decades to come. Let me take a little drink of water, and then who wants to talk about the Pixel reveal? We can show off what Google showed off with the Pixel 9 that's coming next month. I had to take a second drink of water there. Whew. Yeah, my voice doesn't have a lot of life left in it. Steve Pogue, I'm actually on my way to sell my own Xbox right now because of these price hikes for Game Pass. And once I get my own PC, I'm going to treat Game Pass how you plan on using Netflix in the future. And I think that's a great strategy. I mean, seriously, if it fits your play style, a month of Game Pass is an awesome, fun thing to throw some cash on. And then when you're sort of satisfied, you let it lapse for a while. I can't tell you, like, I'm old enough that we used to go and rent games on Fridays because we'd get an extra day, excuse me, at Blockbuster. And my brother and I would just rapidly try to beat the game, and then we'd have to return it. And that was part of the challenge. Obviously, that can't happen with so many games as services, making it like you live in this game forever and you just keep paying money forever. But you know what? Like, I bet you back in the day, if I had played something like Hades and I'd rented it for a weekend, probably two. I would have had an incredible experience. I would have been just totally satisfied. And you're like, yeah, later on, maybe I'll revisit that game. But I think it's just a better way to kind of handle your monthly finances, just saying, like, what is it that's coming out now? What is it that I want to spend a little bit of money on for entertainment? And I can just focus on that. I'm just going to focus on that. I'm going to have a good time. And then when I'm done with it, I'm done with it. And then you can move on to something else. And I'm telling you, it's so silly. I have a backlog of Steam games and Epic games that I have spent and good old games, very little money on. I am a patient gamer. Hashtag patient gamer. I like visiting games for the first time after they've been out for a little while and they've gotten some patches, they've gotten those bug fixes, maybe even a DLC. And that's when I like to jump in and really experience that game in total. I don't pre-order anymore. The last game I tried to pre-order was that was it Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and that broke my heart. And apparently they just gutted all of the development and went back to scratch. And I just saw their most recent, like, it was a couple months ago. I just saw their most recent post, like, oh yeah, we're getting the battle mechanics up and running. And now it doesn't really look like a game I want to play. As much as I love that property, I was such a huge nerd in high school for both the paper and the card game VTES. What did that stand for? Vampire the Masquerade, The Eternal Struggle. That was the card game that you could play. It was like Magic the Gathering, but it was with vampires instead of magic. Um, I'm already rambling. I don't know what my point was going to be here, but you know, spend your money how you want to spend it, and also don't overlook all of the free stuff that you can play that's really good. Again, I don't know what you feel about Epic's business model, but they've given away some bangers, and some of our favorite games to play in our household have been free games from Epic. We haven't spent a dime on. So again, kind of like supporting your local library. If companies are going to give you games for free, go get them and play them, and it's pretty great. Amazon Prime. If you're paying for Prime, which we're going to be canceling our Prime subscription this month, every month they've been giving away free games, and often they tie into your Good Old Games account or your Epic Games account, and you don't even have to use the Prime launcher or download or install from Prime. It's already in a library that you might already want to use better. And what they just gave out Suicide Squad. Whether or not you think that's a great game, I think the game gets a lot better when you can play it for free. I wanted to wrap up this week's show. Let me screen share. And I'm not going to play it because of all the music and all that other stuff, but we've got this intro for the Pixel 9. Write me a breakup letter. Tell them I found something new that actually feels magical, not just the same old thing. Oh, and have it start, Dear Old Phone. And then we get this reveal of a Pixel 9 and the final design, and that's been causing a lot of controversy. I don't hate the design, but I liked the Pixel. So far, I think my favorite has been the Pixel 7. The Pixel 8, I really like my Pixel 8 just because of the bay blue color. But when I'm looking at the different pixels sort of on my desk here, and I look at the Pixel 7 sort of exclamation point camera module versus the Pixel 8's more sort of open visor camera module, I kind of just like the Pixel 7 a little bit better. This is not, I think, germane to what makes for a purchasing recommendation. Because also, I put cases on my phones, and for Pixel phones, I put Peak Design cases on where you see very little of the phone's design. There's very little of the phone construction available. It's just a Peak Design case with a magnetic attachment at that point. So this Pixel 9 has a much harder oval camera bar, which sticks out and to me just screams incomplete product. It is purposely built to fit a case on it to finish off the edges that look unfinished. It looks a little like the Bender visor. People are making that joke. And then also, there's sort of a, excuse me, there's sort of a design memory of the Nexus, specifically the Nexus 6P. If you remember the Nexus 6P, it had that really high-mounted visor. Let me just pull it up for people on the video stream. Nexus 6P. It's going to take a second to come on. Images of the Nexus 6P. And I just want a picture of the back of it. Who do we have here? Deep Specs? I think we can just click on the photo. So, we had this really high-mounted camera bar. It's at the very, very top edge of the phone, but there was at least an organic kind of taper into that camera visor. But it was pretty bulgy. Like, this stuck out. A little like a submarine's periscope, right? If you looked at the phone sideways, there's this really, really thin phone and then this like bolt that kind of sticks out where that camera visor is. I feel like the Pixel 6, 7, and 8 have kind of paid homage to that Nexus 6P camera housing, and now the Pixel 9 looks to be making this a more deliberate chunk on the back of your phone, which to me, again, like I said, to me that looks like you need a case to fill in what used to taper. So on my Peak Design case, there's no, the case is just thick enough that there's not as much of this camera bump on the Pixel 8 Pro. The case is a little thicker, it's got a little bit more of a bumper case kind of feel to it. And also there's the expectation that you're using this to stick onto tripods. You're a more active kind of smartphone user, you're doing more content creation with your phone. You need more durability. And that's what this case kind of looks like, but it fills in the space from the camera bar sticking out the back of the phone. And I think that's ultimately just what we're going to see on the Pixel 9 is I'm going to get the Pixel 9. I'm going to think that that camera oval looks a little unfinished. I think it looks a little inelegant. I don't think it looks as good as the Pixel 8. And then I'm going to put my Peak Design case on it, and I'm never going to look at the construction of the phone ever again. So I feel like it's kind of 6 of one and half a dozen of another. I love Peak Design cases on my Pixels. I have no affiliate links to give you. I have no relationship with Peak Design PR anymore. There's nothing I can sell you that I can make money on by telling you I'm always going to put a Peak Design case on my Pixels. That's it. But this, I also kind of feel like this notion of, oh, the back camera bar is so ugly, who would even want to own that? I find it's kind of one of those like non-issues. Like if you want what a Pixel does well, then you're going to buy a Pixel. What I'm more concerned about is this chip going to be an improvement over the last Tensor? Is Samsung finally improving their radio performance so the phones don't run as hot? Are we going to see any significant camera upgrades, or is it all going to be software? And it makes me really nervous. It makes me really anxious in the same way that Microsoft completely stumbled the launch of ARM-powered PCs. That ad that we just saw from Google is about Gemini. You don't need a Pixel 9 to interact with Gemini. Especially the cloud side of it that Google wants you to be paying a subscription for is a cloud data service. So, what's the point of even trying to put out the more powerful phone if you're selling the phone on data center performance? And in fact, that's actually another argument for why we need to be even more critical of the modem in the Pixel 9 is because if you're going to be throwing a whole bunch of information up to Google data centers, you need the better data connection. So if you're using things like, ultra HDR image processing, video features, you need to be able to upload 4K video over your data connection. It's going to take a huge chunk out of your monthly allowance if you're on a metered data plan like I am. But like the phone itself isn't doing any of that heavy lifting. So I'm a little anxious about the Pixel 9. My current feeling ahead of this launch is that this is going to end up being kind of a placeholder phone. It's the last year that they're stuck with Samsung. Samsung chips are not competitive. They're not as good. So I don't think we're going to see significant changes in architecture because why put that effort in? You make that effort when you can switch over to TSMC and get a better performing chip. That's when we'll see a bigger improvement to tensor performance. And I have every confidence that Google can deliver. Every single time Google has done their own custom silicon, it's come with some really interesting performance advantages in ways that I was not expecting, especially looking back at like the coprocessor on the Pixel 4. So I don't think we're going to see a radical change in camera architecture. I'll be very surprised if Google is doing anything dramatic there, and especially because yet again, I think that's another part of their collaboration and their reliance on Samsung. So even if they wanted to use like that really new, exciting OmniVision camera sensor, I think they're kind of stuck with using Samsung again. So I'll be really surprised if it's not another GN sensor that gets put into the main camera. So what is it that Google can do to make the Pixel 9 look more exciting? They're making their marketing and they're focusing their advertising on AI services. Didn't work for Copilot, and I don't think it's going to work well for the Pixel 9. Sorry, let me get a drink of water here. I know I just muted to cough again. I've got to end this because my voice is failing here. We've got a couple little comments here, and then we can wrap this up. From Tiger Chem, the Pixel 10 can't come soon enough. I think that's where we're going to see a more pronounced change in how the phone is constructed, the partners they use for modems and radios and camera sensors and charging and battery tech. Michael Corcoran saying, yeah, I just think the horizontal camera bar is now a distinctive Pixel look and it's more utilitarian. There's no wobble. So that's still going to be maintained on the Pixel 9. I just think it looks inelegant, but that's still very practical. I like having that as opposed to cameras that have like the OnePlus, huge camera circle, but it's offset. So your phone always kind of wobble rocks whenever you set it down. Ghost Starscream. At this point, I'm not going back to Android unless it's de-Googled Android. I still hope that someone will come out with a Windows on ARM portable that has a good 5G radio in it. And then you're like, well, it's not a Windows phone, but it's a Windows device that I can take phone calls on. Would be pretty cool. Simon says, Hypno, I think only the ultra wide is changing. I'll be curious to see. I'll be really curious to see what sensors they put in. I think there is an opportunity to improve subtly. It won't be night and day because I think Pixel was already ahead of the curve on using a larger telephoto. But some improved image quality, IQ, for the ultra wide would be appreciated. But that's not a huge jump. That's not even as big a jump as the Note 24. Again, for all the people that are like, oh, it's got a shorter zoom, those are idiots. The biggest upgrade that we saw on the Note 24 was getting that better telephoto sensor. That telephoto sensor is so much more usable. I did an article on the Patreon. I did a camera review on the Galaxy Note 24, and if you're not excited about that new telephoto, you are terrible at photography. But the reason we're excited about that new telephoto is because it only catches Samsung up to the telephoto that we had on the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 7 and the Pixel 8 and the Xiaomi 13 Ultra and the Xiaomi 14 and the Vivos and all these other companies that had already increased the telephoto sensor size. That was a big perk. I don't think the ultra wide is going to be as big a perk for the Pixel 9, but it's still nice to see something if there's some kind of improvement that we can point to. Oh, some other people talking about like Gemini and folds and things like that. DTNO, honestly, Pixel 12 is where it's at. Guys, I mean, it's just like, Google, they fail again. I mean, maybe like wait another generation and try again. Better luck next time, Google. It's just not good enough. And you should never change anything except only buy what's most popular. So, that's how you do it. Yeah, Mountain Dew Lou. I have a OnePlus 12. I get that. The OnePlus 12 telephoto. It's not very long. There's not a lot of reach. But man, it's such a good telephoto sensor. Um Oh, Shane Craig apparently did something. Simon says no. Shane Craig has a video on the Pixel 9 range camera setup for each model. Okay. I'm very disappointed that in a lot of the article, not in Shane's video, I'm not disappointed in that. I'm really disappointed in a lot of the articles where they're just focusing on resolution. And that tells you nothing about the performance of those cameras. What you want to know is sensor size and generation. So if we're still using the Samsung GN sensor in the main camera, you're not going to see substantial changes or improvements to photo quality. It's going to be the same as we've had since the Pixel 6, Pixel 6 Pro. And like what the Vivo, I want to say it was the X60 that first used a 1/1.3 inch type sensor. I might have that wrong. I know the X70 definitely had one of those Samsung GN sensors. So, it should be interesting to see. It's still. Oh, actually, Simon Says Hypno just beat me to this point. He says the narrative is changing along with Pixel's increase in marketing and market share. It's still a situation where you can point to something on a Pixel like the Tensor's performance being sort of a generation behind Qualcomm, and you can still imply that that's a deal breaker in ways that you can't ever say you shouldn't buy this iPhone or you shouldn't buy this Samsung. Because Google is a distant third place in the premium space to Samsung and Apple, you can still position them as a do not buy, where you can never outright say this Samsung is a do not buy. Even into phones that were terrible, like the Galaxy S22. That phone was terrible. It ran hot, it had a tiny battery, it had mediocre camera sensors, and it was like an $800 phone. And you still had people saying, well, but I mean, like, if you're going to use a smaller phone in Android land, I mean, I guess this is the one that you need to buy. And you don't get that same kind of foregone conclusion with a Pixel. A Pixel still needs to prove itself. A Pixel still needs to show it's got the merit to earn your dollars, which at this point, moving all around, I guess the last thing is just to kind of lead this off. I just did a review on a new Nex dock, and I had a really lovely exchange, a back and forth with the team at Nex Computers, just talking about like I really do want to try and focus some future coverage. I think it's a big deal if Android 15 really does bring a better polished desktop mode to the core Android experience. Because right now, you've got, in the United States, you only have Samsung and Motorola, and only their premium phones, only their most expensive phones have a desktop mode. And then internationally, you've got Honor and Huawei. And then some gaming, like Asus has some gaming features that really expand when you plug into a larger screen. But if Google properly brings an improved desktop mode to Android 15, and you can get that on a Pixel 8a, I'm not going to be as upset if the Google desktop mode isn't as nice as ready for Honor Magic Desktop or whatever Samsung's doing. I'm going to be really excited to show a $400 phone that can almost compete with a 12th generation Core i3. because that's an article that's going to be coming out to the Patreon soon. I did all this performance benchmarking on the Pixel 8a, and I compared it against the Pixel 8 Pro. And I also had a Chromebook in-house. And then I never got that article published because sitting upright has been difficult these last couple of weeks. But that article is coming with all of the bar graphs and benchmarks and tests. How does a $400-ish phone compare against a $400-ish Chromebook when both are running Android apps? And I don't think anyone in this chat is going to be too surprised by the results of a showdown like this. And then, if the 8A gets that desktop mode, we finally have a proper replacement for the LG Velvet. That's how long it's been since we've had a good, decently powerful mid-ranger phone that could plug into a display and give you a better screen, a better canvas UI to work with. That, to me, is actually kind of a big deal. And it also kind of chips away at the Pixel 9 a little bit. We're going to have the 9, the 9 Pro, the 9 Pro XL, the 9 Fold, and then here's this little Pixel 8a that can also be a home computer. That could be really exciting. I'm going to be bringing out laptop docks if we get to see that functionality. So anyway, we've got a lot on the horizon. We'll learn more when August rolls around and we can see these products in the official Google keynote. I have no idea if Team Pixel is going to be sending phones out. If not, I think the only one I really want to spend time with is the 9 Pro XL and just see whatever their best camera strategy might look like. I know I like playing with foldables. I'm just not the foldable guy because instead of having a folding phone with a plastic screen, I'd rather have a tablet dock and a laptop dock and a desktop dock. And then whenever I need a bigger screen for my phone, I can just go and plug it in and then get this bigger experience. Or I can plug in some glasses and have a little Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, and I have a full computer that only I can see. That to me is way more exciting in the long run than a plastic screen that can crack if I fold it too many times. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm still backlogged on. I've got a pair of really cool game controllers for phones. I've got another fitness tracking watch from Amazfit. I've got those beautiful Odyssey Maxwell headphones that I really need to get a review out on. I can finally sit upright for longer periods of time so I can shoot some of these videos. So stay tuned. There's a lot of stuff coming to the channel, and it's going to be kind of funky. The order that these videos come out is going to be very off the pulse of what was like the launch and the release and the strategy on YouTube, just because I have been out of commission. So I'm trying to make up all that work right now. But folks, thank you for tuning in. I apologize for everyone for all the coughs and sniffles and snorts and biology that you had to hear. But this was a really news-heavy week that we had a lot that we had to discuss. And I'm really glad we had some really fun chatter and conversations here for the live stream. And I hope folks are catching this on the replay and on both on Twitch and the audio replay for people who like to consume audio podcasts. I don't know what our strategy is going to be this week. So TK was traveling and he really just needed some vacation time, and I was happy to oblige him that we didn't do a best of our week. But I think we're going to try and get one out this week, if not Friday night, maybe Thursday night, maybe Friday morning. So stay tuned. There's also a ton of other really fun people making streams every week. I've mentioned them before in the Gadget Goddesses and Easy Computer Solutions. And Scott Peachy is doing business news now, which is a really cool turn for someone like Scott who really knows what he's talking about. I'm missing people. El Jefe Reviews and Nomad Tech Project and just really, really good folks out there making cool stuff. They need your support more than ever. It's just really dire out there for content creators where Apple's just ripping off all our stuff, right? You know, so I guess just buy an iPhone and then the iPhone will tell you about what we do, and you don't need to give us any traffic or support anything that we do. So that's how AI works, apparently. Folks, I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. And I'll catch you back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe. Take care of yourselves so you can keep taking care of others, and I'll catch you back. I love you all.